We are
Hello,
live.
welcome to the Quick Draw with the Ornery Young Guns. I am driving today. I am John, the token black guy who always dies first. We have my co-host, Mike, who is the Mormon playboy. Flex for the camera, Mike. And we have Dee, who is literally always raped every time a man catcalls her. Hashtag me too. And we have Sunny, our guest today, Sunny Bunch, who is the movie critic who actually likes movies that people care about. So, today we're talking about we're starting really with the Harvey Weinstein scandal and the fact that it's not really much of a scandal in the sense that Hollywood, I don't think really this is out of the norm for there. And in general, I suppose its impact on popular culture and what does it really mean for what is the impact? What does it really mean to have a guy who has been in Hollywood as long as he has had a history known, as admitted by several big people in Hollywood, admitting that they knew, and really did nothing about it. So you know
I really just want to know, who the hell did he piss off?
You know,
whose daughter did he rape? Like, seriously.
Apparently, it's Ronan Farrow. Like Ronan Farrow is annoyed because the Weinsteins basically resurrected Woody Allen's career. So he spent a lot of time kind of collating all these stories. Spent like the better part of a year, I think. Talking to people, getting people on tape, and then the New York Times. There was a theory running around that this was actually a power play by Bob Weinstein to get Harvey Weinstein out of the Weinstein Company, and I kind of dismissed that whole angle of it, because it was kind of like the idea that Bob Weinstein would open his company up to this sort of exposure struck me as totally ridiculous. But I do kind of buy the idea that Bob Weinstein may have leaked some of this to the New York Times. Because if you remember the sequence of events, there was a New York Times story that talked about all the things, like not all the things, some of the things he did. And then a day later, the New Yorker came out with their story, which had like the actual rapes in it. So the argument was the New York Times version of the story was kind of a whitewashed, like there was all this sexual harassment and it was bad. And, he's going to be out at the company, but like the New Yorker story is much more damning and much more devastating. Again, it has like literal rape in it, which is much worse than what was in the New York Times story. So I forget why I chimed in here, but the long and the short of it, I think.
You forget all the time why we chime in. It's okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I lost my train of thought. Anyway, Weinstein's bad.
Yeah, just to sum it up, right? Because and here it is. It was Quentin Tarantino who was the one who was saying, that he knew enough to do more than he did. That's not the only person. There was someone else who basically was saying that like they knew, but they wish they did more.
But Sonny, to your point, what I'm kind of wondering is, okay, so the New Yorker had the really bad story, but the Weinsteins have suppressed stuff in the past before. Why didn't they suppress it now?
Well, I mean, I think we're in a slightly different media environment. Like I read a story yesterday, or maybe it was even this morning, suggesting that the reason that Weinstein couldn't survive at this time is because the left is really angry about Donald Trump. And like on the one hand, it's easy to kind of dismiss that sort of story as like, oh yeah, sure, it's Trump's fault. It's Trump's fault that the Weinsteins are going down for rape. But I actually kind of understand that line of argument. Like if you're so frustrated about this guy being the president, you're just not going to tolerate any more of these cover-ups. And again, we're in a very different media environment than we were 10 or 15 or 20 years ago, right? Like the whole kind of left-wing pile-on takedown culture is very real and very, very effective. I like this, look at some of the stories over the last couple of, I don't know, 6 months, 9 months or so, who's the DJ, the music producer who was accused of, was it Kesha? Was it the
I know who
you know what I'm talking, DJ Luke or so? Yeah. So anyway, like that guy, he wasn't protected. You see a lot of. I think you are going to see more stories where people are just done with covering up this sort of thing, because we're just in a very different media environment now than we were before.
No, what did you have, Dee? Because I know she was saying something earlier.
I mean, I was sort of pointing out, like, there was other people too that were sort of talking. I mean, Matt Damon came out and said something. Ben Affleck was like, "Oh, I didn't know," and then he started getting accused by Rose McGowan. I mean, it just sort of seems like it's a pile-on at this point, where everyone is like saying like that they either knew about it and did nothing, or like that they were raped and didn't speak out, or it's just sort of a mess. I mean, every day. But one of the things that I sort of thought was interesting is the fact that like people are now pulling up, like at the Oscars, there was a speech where they were like, "Oh, well, you don't have to sleep with Harvey Weinstein anymore," and everyone laughed. And like, I don't remember. I mean, I never watched the Oscars anyways, but it's just the fact that like, I mean, to me, if someone made a joke like that and everyone laughed at it, like as a normal audience member, like that would sort of pique your interest under normal circumstances. Like, why is this funny, so to speak? Or Courtney Love coming out and saying, like, 5 years ago, she said, don't go to a private hotel party if you're invited by Harvey Weinstein. I mean, the fact that there have been things said publicly by well-known people for years and that we haven't, sort of a little bit freaky to me.
Well, and I think part of it was because a lot of people, I guess, because I think most people I know at least kind of weren't surprised by this. They were just like, oh, because I mean, with Roman Polanski, I mean, when you got him and he was lurking around for so many years, Weinstein kind of just doesn't shock anybody. But I think part of the reason why I think a lot of big Hollywood names didn't want to say anything, I mean, now they're saying, oh, I wish I had said more. I don't really believe that. I think what it was simply, look, early in their career, maybe they had stuff done to them, but once they became big, they didn't want to hurt the industry that was writing their paycheck. So they just said, okay, we're just going to sweep it under the rug and kind of try to live with it. Because there was like a long interview I heard with, damn it, I forgot his name, Corey Feldman. And he was talking about how he had like all kinds of things happen to him. And it's like, well, why did you wait till now to say it? I suspect it's because he's kind of a big name now and he didn't want to hurt that, So now they're saying it because I think at this point they can kind of throw it off on other things. If you look at the response to Matt Walsh when he was writing, and they were saying that this is not about the culture in Hollywood. This is just about men learning not to rape. And it's like, no, this is about the culture in Hollywood. It really is.
My Schadenfreude is off the.
I know, right?
Chart. Just watching the left trip over themselves to try to disassociate themselves. Oh, I didn't know about this. I totally didn't know about this. Did you know about this? And they're like, yeah, you did, you fucker.
I was sort of looking at it like this.
They're just biting each other's heads off, and it's like they're tripping over each other. It's like seriously, it's like watching like a discotheque is on fire and people are just like scrambling to get out the one exit.
I'm to the point now where I may watch the Oscars for the first time just to see the meltdown happen because I'm almost positive something's going to go wrong and I want to see it. So
I don't think so. I think by the time the Oscars roll around, it's going to be swept under the rug. Everyone will have done their Opus Dei, whippings and chains, and they'll have purged themselves and sufficiently for their peers anyway. I don't think it's going to be that big a deal, the Oscar. But
well, and if I may, I realize I'm jumping the track a little bit here, but I was going to say the whole Me Too hashtag came out in the wake of this, but I think there was a reason why it came out now, and I think again it was the same as that response to Matt Welsh. a lot of people seem to be scrambling now to say, I don't want to associate this with popular culture, so we're going to try to pretend this isn't a Hollywood culture thing. This isn't a pop culture thing. This is a man thing, and that's why they're encouraging all women, even outside of Hollywood, to speak out.
No, I disagree with that, actually. I think it's not necessarily a man or woman thing. I don't think it's solely, I mean, Hollywood is sort of under the spotlight right now, but I don't think it's like just Hollywood that is
it's not
an issue. I mean, there's definitely people in power will abuse people who are not in power. And I mean, some of the stories that I've seen, you know, there are rich women producers who act the same way. I think I think it's Jennifer Lawrence. She's been in a bunch of stuff lately. Katniss Everdeen.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh yeah, the Hunger Games.
She came out and she was like, you know, she had to like stand naked in front of a woman producer and was told to diet or something. Like, but it was completely demeaning and, you know, sexualized, just the way that she wrote her story. So I agree with your point that like the Me Too thing is like trying to sort of whitewash and say it's like a big old sexism problem, when I don't think it's necessarily that. I think it's more like a power problem.
I think you're onto something with that. Hollywood is a huge power enclave for the left, and this little shit show that's coming out of it is exposing the corruption. I mean, typically we think of corruption, we think of like Chicago, we think of Washington, D.C., politics, but Hollywood is just as bad, if not worse. Like, you don't hear, I think, too much about pedophilia in Washington. I'm sure it happens, but it's almost like an aspect of the culture there from stories that we hear. And so it's very corrupt. And I think what they're trying to do so they don't lose that power enclave, because if a light is shone on that and then everyone sees how corrupt it is, people are going to start scrutinizing more what they watch, what they consume, and from whom they buy it. And that's bad for Hollywood. That's bad for pop culture. Pop culture, at least in my opinion, pop culture is kind of an appeal to the least common denominator. And if people stop mindlessly watching what the people in power put on TV, and they start, you know, weighing and considering what they consume, then that infringes on their power. So I think what they're trying to do is kind of deflect and say, oh, no, this isn't because we have too much power. This isn't because we're corrupt. This is a problem that's rampant everywhere. Everybody has this problem. Everybody suffers from sexual assault and rape and blah, 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 because it's a real problem in the United States, but it's endemic to Hollywood.
Right. And I think that's the thing, is that it's become something of a feminist sop. It's just basically that it's becoming this thing where now we have to lecture men in general. And I agree totally with Dee. It is a power thing. You know, it is people exploiting a great deal of power, especially over people who oftentimes are young, and just wanting to get in and want to break into the Hollywood enclave. I guess they want to break in too. And so they're desperate to just do anything, and they abuse that. But I think for them to then say, now let's have all women speak out about how they're abused, what they're trying to say is, like you said, Mike, we just don't, it's not here, it's everywhere. Don't look at here, don't focus on this.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Right. So I think that's what they're aiming for. I was going to ask, you know, Sonny, I don't know how much like direct experience you have with like Hollywood types, but
all of my experiences with Hollywood types have been in very tightly controlled press type circumstances, you know, like interviews and that sort of thing. And nobody has ever tried to rape me in a hotel while I'm
That's disappointment. I would be insulted.
You know, sometimes it really causes you to like question your self-worth and value. Like I've never been propositioned once, and I don't, you know. But the simple fact of the matter is, I do think that there is a like Dee said, kind of a power issue here, right? That this is if you create a like kind of hedonistic utopia where all of your sexual and physical desires are sated, as Los Angeles and Hollywood kind of is in the popular imagination, if not quite, in fact, then, you know, it just becomes kind of the norm to take advantage, you know, to pick the fruit from the tree. But Thomas Frank had an interesting piece in the Guardian either today or yesterday about how, you know, they're tying it specifically to kind of this left-wing politics idea that, like, Weinstein, you know, if you look back at Weinstein's initial statement, kind of disclaiming responsibility, he says, "Don't focus on me. I'm sorry. I've done bad things. I'm creating an a fund for women directors in the name of my mother," which is like creepy on several different levels. Like, my rape fund for women directors is named after my mom. Like, that's weird. But like at the end of the statement, he says, you know, "I'm gonna go after the NRA. I'm gonna stick it to Trump. We need to keep our eye on the prize here." And like the argument that Frank was making was that you have all these people who, you know, say that they're feminists, and they say they're for equality, and they say they're for you know, liberal causes, and they use all of this as a cover to behave like the worst people in the universe. And I think there's some truth to that. I do think that there's a certain amount of truth to that. Look at the, you know, this, I don't know if you guys have talked about the shitty media men list. Have you guys seen this? It's basically a Excel document that has been spread about by mostly, as far as I can tell, I've seen the list. As far as I can tell, it's mostly New York centered journalists, and it is like, it's just kind of passed around from woman to woman, like a samizdat, you know, novel in Russia, like, as a warning.
About this,
yeah. So like, and if you look at the list, it's all creepy left wing douchebags who spend all day on Twitter. They spend all day on Twitter talking about, you know, how we need equality, and it's important to stick up for women, and, you know, can't believe these disgusting anti-choice Republicans are doing all this stuff. And in the meantime, they're like, you know, going to rape dungeons with their like female interns. So
yeah, I remember that came out because I saw it on Twitter. So one of them was some journalist, and apparently he would anally rape interns, and one of the interns that he was having sex with got pregnant. I think he bullied her or threatened her to get an abortion, or even threatened to murder her if she did it.
I haven't seen this specific story, but it doesn't seem out of the realm of possibility.
And I should also point out that what's it, T?
Oh, well, there's
okay. You do first. You go first. Ladies first.
Bit of a time delay, guys.
I'm not a misogynist.
That blue check Sam Chris, I don't remember. He's like some type of journalist or something. He wrote a piece on like a WordPress about tomorrow you guys are going to see like allegations against me by a woman. Yes, I was like aggressive to her and not picking up any of her cues, but we had slept together previously, so I'm letting you know I'm apologizing. But he was still trying to out her as like basically a slut, you know, before.
Yeah, there it was. That's what I was thinking.
She was clearly asking for it. With, you know, she didn't actually say, "Hey, let's go back to my place and have sex." She was just there, and they had talked before, so clearly she was asking for it. I mean, let's be honest.
I read her statement on Facebook, and it was like just the way she was talking, how like he was trying to push alcohol on her. He was trying to come to his apartment. He tried to force himself on the bus to, because she was like, bus, so he tried to, you know, get on the bus with her to like, I mean, and it's sort of crazy to me because like my experience is I live in a pretty liberal town, college town, plus it's like the capital of Wisconsin, so it's pretty lefty based here. My experience, I don't have a lot of experience with conservative dudes just based off of, you know, where I've been, but they always seem more, you know, not forceful. With lefty guys, it's sort of funny. I think it's one of those, they sort of, can't think of the word, but like it's like looking in a mirror. So like they accuse people of doing the things that
projecting, yeah.
Sorry, I'm so dumb.
Mansplaining.
And I was
this is what we have Sonny on the show to warn us when we are exercising our white male privilege.
Or just male privilege, I guess. Well, no, apparently I'm privileged because
You're not really black, John. We've established this. Remember,
this is
you're
true.
Conservative,
Yeah,
you're black, so
I'm sorry.
Can't be both. You can be conservative or black. You can't be both. Okay.
Right. I have a hard time picking between the two.
Pick one.
And even though it's been beat to death by Matt Walsh and Ben Shapiro before me, I can't help but draw that comparison between Weinstein and the absolute just lauding of just praise when Hugh Hefner died. It's so hard not to think of that, because it's like, again, what fundamentally did Hefner do that was all that different from Weinstein?
He asked for consent. I mean,
well, yeah, but again, that's it. That's the only difference. And so it's just like, well,
that's a pretty difference. I mean,
yeah, it is a big difference, but it's still.
I don't know about that. Here's the thing. Okay, yes, consent is important. I don't want anyone to misinterpret what I'm saying. But if the only thing that keeps you from doing an act that is immoral or bad is whether or not somebody will like consent to it, that's like a really low threshold for morality.
Right.
Like, I don't. There needs to be more than that. That's a baseline.
Right. And
you should meet that baseline, though. I mean, you should be able to meet consent, and the fact that there's so many people out there who can't meet consent, and the fact that most of them use their power to force you to do things without consent. I mean,
well, and I think that's part of the power dynamic. The power, if you are in a position of power, or if you perceive yourself as having power, you fall into the mindset of, I want this, I will just take it.
Right. Well, and also
you don't see other people as people. You don't see them as human beings. You see them as things to be used for your own enjoyment, for your own elevation, material elevation, and they don't see it as violating someone's personhood. They see it as, I want this, I'm going to take it, and no one's going to stop me because I have money, I have fame, I have power.
And that's why it comes out as coerced consent. Because, I mean, if you think about it, what happens with the director that says, I want you to do X, Y, and Z, or else, you may not get that role, or you may not get that
never
part.
Work in this town again.
She might consent, but it's kind of a consent based on, I want the job, and I'm not going to get the job unless. So again, it's not per se a lack of consent.
Well, it's like if a woman's being raped and she knows that resistance is only going to get her maimed or killed, and so she just goes with it for now because she knows if she fights back, she's going to end up dead. So she's trying not to piss off her rapist. Is it any less rape? Did it become consensual because she's in survival mode? Like, obviously not.
Well, and there is a great deal of difference there, what were you going to say on that, D? Because I think you had something there.
I didn't have anything.
Okay.
We're good.
Because I was hey, I was just making sure, you got to be chivalrous. Chivalry, I realize, is something of a dead art, but I like to stick with it. It's sometimes handy. It's like, whatever.
So funny, where do you see, like, because we've talked about power and the power dynamic. Where does this power come from, though? Because, I mean, there are lots of wealthy people in the world. There's lots of people who are powerful. I mean, people who have political power that aren't necessarily, super rich.
Sure.
So where's this power come from in Hollywood?
Well, so specifically in the case of Harvey Weinstein, his power kind of rests on a three-legged stool, right? It's, on the one hand, he has a good eye for talent and can raise the money needed to make movies. Like, he is personally wealthy, obviously, but he is not like fabulously wealthy. His real power is being able to generate funds to bring a movie to life. The second leg of this power is his ability to attract top talent, because he can get the money. But the reason he can attract top talent is the third leg of his power, which is he is like the most feared Oscar campaigner in the history of the business. His power rests not so much on being able to make profitable films, though his movies often make money. It is because he is like the king of Oscar bait. He's the guy who gets out there and gets the stories planted that get your movies top billing, that get you kind of in the conversation. Like every year there's a Harvey Weinstein movie that is like, okay, that's not one of the 5 or 10 best movies of the year, but I know how it got there. I know how it got on this short list because...
You mean the Oscars are political? Say it itself.
Exactly. So the reason Weinstein has been crippled is because I bet he could still raise money to make movies, right? I bet he could still actually come up with the funds, because nobody in the business world really cares about ethics, right? They just don't care. He could go to some shady Russian oil magnate and be like, I'm going to get you on the Oscar red carpet if you give me $10 million to make this movie. And he'll have it like that. But he doesn't have the power to attract top talent, because nobody's going to vote for those movies in the Oscars anymore. Like, he's a pariah. He's shunned. He is just he's out. So like,
what's the big deal? Let's slow down a little bit. What's the big deal about Oscars? And I'm saying this as someone who I watch movies, but I'm not big into movies,
sure.
And so I really don't care about the Oscars. I'm just a regular guy.
Sure.
So why does that act as such a carrot or stick for?
Well, I mean,
people?
If you don't care about movies and you don't care about the Oscars, it doesn't matter. But in the industry, you either make movies for money or you make movies for prestige. And the apotheosis of prestige is the Oscar. Like, if you're a true artiste, you want to rack up those golden statues.
Does it follow that if you have the prestige, you get the money as well?
Right. So once you're an Oscar-winning, actor, or an Oscar-winning, or even Oscar-nominated, really, like once you can put Oscar in any form on the ad copy that you send out you put on TV and whatever, you are looking at a solid income bump. But again, it's also a function of prestige. Like, people, people in Hollywood consider themselves to be artists. We can argue about how true that is. And they kind of bristle at the idea that all they're doing is churning out product or content for consumption by the masses. They think of themselves as artists, and like the way that you measure how great an artist you are is by how many Oscars you have on your shelf.
I won't dispute the point that they're artists. I believe film is art. And just like all art, there's art that's meant for the masses, and then there's art that's a little more highbrow or somewhere in between. But they're being paid to play pretend. Like,
yeah,
it's not like they're winning the Nobel Prize for their art or the Nobel Prize for something that actually contributes to society. That's not to say movies can't contribute to society. I think they do. I love the artistic aspect of film, and I also like to watch Marvel blockbusters because I like my escapism too. So I don't understand, and it's almost based on what you described. It's almost like a chicken or an egg thing, because the Oscars bring money, but then if you get lots of money, then it almost makes the Oscar irrelevant, but people still pursue the Oscars. So it's like, what's the point?
People, if I worked in Hollywood, I would want to win an Oscar. I mean, it's just like, it's recognition from your peers, and it's kind of like arguing over, Pulitzers or whatever. Like,
yeah. So
I mean, I would probably, I would love to win a Pulitzer. It's never going to happen. But like, I'm also not going to get real salty about it.
Well, and I think, this reminds me of something someone told me years ago about the paparazzi, and they were saying that why, because people kept wondering, why are the paparazzi so relentless? Why are they constantly willing to violate basic privacy of a person just to get a photo? And Someone said, because of us. Because we are willing to buy those pictures for premium amounts of money. So that being the case, as long as we're willing to buy them, they're willing to do whatever they have to get them. And I think Hollywood operates more or less the same way, is that part of the reason, part of the power, because you're asking, Mike, where does the power come from of these producers? Part of it is just the glitz and the glamour. It's the image of Hollywood. That's why people can come in, you know, at least the people who come from outside of Hollywood, who come in and say, you know, they want to get in because they have an image in their head of what it looks like to be part of Hollywood. So part of Hollywood's power rests on how we think of it. So, you know, our image of it actually fuels its own power. So as long as they maintain that image, and I think that's why they're so touchy about the image right now, because that image is what draws people.
So this actually kind of ties nicely to, like, we got a question in the chat here. It's almost a, does life imitate art or imitate life type of question. So Kel Anderson wants to know, so how much of the rape culture moral panic throughout the country is a result of the actual rape culture in Hollywood?
Huh. You know, considering who it comes from, that actually may not be too far off, especially when you consider that there are at least a fair number of movies that also portray. I mean, why do you think The Handmaid's Tale became so popular? I mean, honestly, it has nothing to do with anything actually going on, but yet they're absolutely convinced that we're making basically a documentary. I mean, especially with Trump around. But I guarantee you, even if Handmaid's Tale had been made before Trump had ever even thought about running for president, it would have gotten more or less the same response from Hollywood.
It was a book written in like the 1980s for a reaction to Reagan, and it got about as much attention from the book reading crowd as it's getting right now from the Hulu watching crowd.
Right.
It's like the chick tracks of politics.
Yeah. In terms of that question, I don't know, because like I've seen arguments where, like, no matter how like woke the Hollywood people are, like they can never meet the demands of the left to like not be woke. One of the examples, that movie that came out with Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence,
Passengers.
The space Passengers.
Oh, right.
Yes. There was a whole.
I mean,
it was. Yeah, it was an interesting movie. It was basically, it had a really interesting moral question where, like, the dude woke up the pretty girl, and then, I mean, he woke her up because he wanted to sleep with her. To be with her.
What I thought was interesting in the movie is the morality of his decision was pretty much based on timing. The longer he waited, the more moral his decision became.
Right.
The whole premise of the movie, I think, was sort of questioning that morality and questioning that thing. But there was like a whole big feminist backlash to it, because they were like they were saying like it didn't go far enough to condemn his decision, which I sort of disagree. I mean, because he basically sacrificed his life and like died at the end to like save everyone. But
well, I mean, no, here's something, and Sonny, you can speak to this and tell me if I'm just talking out my ass, which I usually am. But isn't that the point of good art? Good art's not supposed to drop a moral anvil on your head. It's not supposed to condemn necessarily or promote certain behaviors, especially that are morally ambiguous. It's supposed to present the morally ambiguous situation and then let you, the audience, the consumer of the art, come to your own conclusions, and that's then you reflect upon, and it's supposed to kind of be almost a self-revelatory thing. You're a little introspection going on. Do you learn something about yourself if you think, yeah, I would do that, or you learn something about yourself if you say, I would never do that. And people, two different people can watch the same event, the same art, and have two completely different reactions to it. Isn't that the point of art?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I also think that that Passengers in particular, I remember the fight over this movie, and I remember actually kind of enjoying it, because the thing I love the most about the movie is that she decides to give up all of her hopes and dreams to be like a big time New Yorker writer, so she can settle down with this dude on the spaceship. And I I didn't think it was actually. I thought it was the movie is very kind of critical of him and the choices that he makes. So I like, or at least opens it up to like a fair question of, is what he did right? He's clearly going insane by the midpoint of the movie. Like he's being driven nuts by loneliness. So anyway, but yeah, I mean, it's a movie that's about like I think like most good art, it makes you kind of question your premises and see what you think you would do in any given situation.
Yeah, because I watched that movie with my wife, and we watched the movie, we enjoyed it, and then we had a really awesome like hour-long conversation about, well, what would you do? Like. Right. And she and I have felt very differently about his decision. I don't remember the exact debate, but it was fun. That was actually more fun for me, at least, than watching the movie. Was sitting down with my wife and saying, what would you do? Like, is what he did right? Was he what he did wrong? And I learned something about myself. I learned something about my wife, and we had a really positive, fun discussion.
I may be one of those people also who managed to sometimes draw moral questions out of things that may not be, they may not have been written.
You're that asshole that like tries to find something some artistic value in Pacific Rim, aren't you? Just sit down and watch the fucking mecha, okay?
Well, because I'm very sensitive to allegory, so that it's like the reason I could never like Avatar. I hated that movie so much. I mean, so many people watched it and they were like, okay, it was like an action movie. I was like, no, because I know exactly what they're allegorizing, and I hate it. It's annoying. Like, as long as
the most overhyped movie ever.
Well, yeah, that too. Well, as I like to call it, it's Captain Planet with bullets and arrows. I mean, basically, that's all it was. It's the same basic premise. It is. It's like, well, exactly. There you go. All they needed was green mullets, and you'd have been pretty much there. But like, it's just Hollywood has a tendency to moralize, and I think that's one of the reasons. The irony here is that I think there is something of the relationship between Hollywood and the rest of the country is a very, very odd relationship, because on the one hand, it's both antagonistic and it's like, what?
Give me your money.
It's symbiotic.
My shit.
Yeah, it's symbiotic and it's antagonistic. We tend to hate Hollywood elites because we hate it when they lecture us. We hate it when they, this is what we think on political matters, and we're like, shut the hell up and just do what we pay you to do. But on the other hand, it's like, but keep doing that thing that we pay you to do, and we'll keep paying you to do it. So I think
I think that kind of speaks to Sonny's earlier point about how they perceive themselves. They're artists. They're artistes. Right.
Well, apparently
they
more
don't.
These days.
They're not producers of widgets. They're not there to. They're not mass producing something. Everything they do is a job shop of sorts. They're trying to create something unique and tailored to their specific artistic vision.
Right, and they sometimes are, but I think also what they think of themselves as are, who was it who said, it was years ago I heard it, where they were saying that, part of the problem is when one becomes successful in Hollywood, they have a tendency to feel guilty about their own success, so they feel the need to like self-flagellate. And usually that means they add other people, because apparently everybody's a leftist. They think in collective terms, so they don't just self-flagellate, they flagellate everyone in their group.
It sounds like a fancy way to say circle jerk, but
well, that's what the Screen Actors Guild is. But it's just one of those things where it's like that's what they do. It's like, oh my God, guilty me. Oh my God, slap myself with the whip for I have everything and everyone has nothing. And actually, if you read Primetime Propaganda, anyone read that, Ben Shapiro's book? Because of course I've read it. But the point is that one of the things he points out is that one of the reasons he was pointing it out as a reason to explain why it is a lot of people in Hollywood are anti-capitalist, but I'm applying it a little bit more widely. What he was saying is that Hollywood, getting ahead in Hollywood, is very much a matter of who you know and luck. Capitalism in general doesn't work that way, but that's what they think of when they think of capitalism. They think of their own rise, and they figure, well, it's got to be the same for everybody else. So that's why they tend to have that view. But I think that at the end of the day, because they think that way, and they think, well, I'm just like anybody else who made it, then they tend to think, okay, so I'm basically a representation of, higher culture, for better or worse. And that means that what they have a tendency to do is think of themselves as more than artists, but as they need to be kind of moral arbiters because they feel, you know, whether it's based in guilt or whether it's based on feeling that they're part of some avant-garde, they have to be the moral arbiter for everybody. They have to be that person who says, you know, we have to go out and tell people, you know, messages that we think are important for them to hear. Now, again, that's their right, but it also means they tend to lecture, and people tend to hate them for it, you know. So, like I said, it just seems to be a very odd maelstrom of we hate them, but we also want to consume their work, you know. So it's just kind of funny how that tends to work out. But I think, like I said, they do think of themselves sometimes as more than artists.
Sonny,
you know?
were you the one that wrote the article a while back about highbrow, lowbrow, and mediumbrow art? And how
I mean, maybe
somebody wrote an article. I can't remember if it was you or someone else. But somebody wrote an article. I thought, and it kind of speaks to John's point, was where, you know, we used to have this understanding that there's highbrow, there's lowbrow, and there's mediumbrow art, and it's okay to enjoy, you know, different things from those different tiers. But what Trump has kind of done, or Trump's election kind of represents, is a loathing of the highbrow and a love of the lowbrow to the exclusion of everything else.
Oh, I think that was Kevin Williamson. Are you thinking of Kevin Williamson's?
Might be. It might be.
Like the white minstrelsy piece.
Yeah.
No, I think that there is, well, so somebody, maybe it was John Lovett or John Favreau, one of those guys, made a very funny joke, I thought, which was, I can't believe liberals got football in the divorce. And I like, and I think there's something to that, right? Like the election of Trump is having a very negative impact on a lot of on the way people view not only themselves but also the culture. And like I think the fight over the anthem and the kneeling and all that is like the example one in this. Like if you I have always been a person who has argued very strenuously to separate art and artists and like politics and all that. And the NFL thing is in kind of a weird gray area because it's kind of involving the art that is the football game, and it kind of isn't. But also like, but anyway, if you like let your love of football diminish because of this and because of the fight that Trump and Trump's allies are picking with the NFL, I kind of pity you. Because I think it's a really unhealthy way to go through life. But like,
it's almost ironic too, because the people that complain about politicizing everything are the ones now politicizing everything.
Yeah.
Or responding to the politicizing by further politicizing it.
Right. I mean, I like this is a little tougher than some of the other stuff. Like, if you don't watch a movie because somebody donates money to Democrats, I don't have any time for that. I have no use for that sort of argument. With the anthem thing, it's a little different because it's like during the football games. It's, you know, but also like this is entirely the whole thing got sparked again by Trump. I mean, like if it wasn't for him, this would have just died out. It would have just gone away. But then he made it a challenge. He said, like, you know, you football players do what I tell you, and like they're obviously not going to do that. So I don't know. It's the whole thing is such a giant CF.
Well, it brings up an interesting point though, because I've had this debate with other conservatives, and it usually doesn't go. I guess I have the unpopular opinion here, in more ways than one. We talk about pop culture and capturing the pop culture to help kind of restore the balance of power, if you will, and I want to get your thoughts on this, and I know Dee and John have some opinions, and so this will be an interesting debate. But the argument goes like this: we need to take back the pop culture. The left controls pop culture. We can't convert anyone to our side. We can't get the message out until we control the pop culture. And my argument is, well, it won't matter if we have the pop culture or not, because pop culture is always a race to the bottom. It always is. The whole point of pop culture is it appeals to the masses, and so therefore, by nature, it appeals to the least common denominator. And conservatism, as an ideology, as a philosophy, is on a higher plane. And so the argument is, well, we should use this very crass, very base tool to try to elevate that by nature devalues art. By nature, that mass appeals to the least common denominator to somehow elevate people to this higher plane of thinking. And so, Trump's popularity is like, oh yeah, he's going to take back the culture. He's going to take back the culture. But it's like, yeah, okay, he might take back the culture. He's not going to improve it.
Right.
So I wanted to get your guys' thought on that.
Well, let D on that one. I was going to say first, right?
Go ahead, D.
Okay. One of the examples that I sort of want to bring up, I know before we were talking about how basically the gay rights movement was largely it was made possible for gay marriage, I think, because gay relationships were popularized in a lot of like our TV shows and movies and everything. But one of the things which I think is a more poignant example would be the question about abortion on TV shows. And for instance, there's like a lot of popular shows right now that feature abortion as a storyline. For instance, Crazy Ex-Girlfriend had one of the characters go through an abortion. She was like a married woman starting law school who was older, and she knew like if she was pregnant or something, then it would put her plans off, and she was just upset about it. So she ends up doing an abortion, and it sort of portrays that. There's another show I don't watch, but it was more popular. It featured an abortion the year before, and then there's another show called You're the Worst, which is about a character who is like, she's to her husband and they're trying to like make it work, and then she's ends up going to a clinic to get an abortion, and she meets with a pro-life person who's trying to convince her otherwise, and then at the end of it, the pro-life person is like, oh, I was going to tell you to do it, there's no way you're ready for a kid. And the left is right now trying to popularize the idea of abortion being an okay thing.
Right, and historically in art, good girls don't have abortions. But to your point, I don't think us capturing popular culture is going to reverse that trend necessarily. I think it boils down to more like, are we going to tell good stories that are pro-life? When I watch a lot of conservative media, it's usually garbage. It's very didactic. It's very in your face. So some of the movies that are really popular with conservatives, like God's Not Dead or November Baby, or is October Baby? Is that the one about the abortion survivor? I haven't seen the latter one. I heard that one was actually pretty good, but God's Not Dead was horrible.
It was. And see, here's the thing: we may not disagree on this then, because I think what a lot of people mean by take back the culture is we want it to stop. Like, for instance, right now, what Dee was talking about, where the people are with particular ideologies is shifted by the constant portrayal. Like, I used to get annoyed sometimes watching shows like Law and Order, where they would, pro-life, any kind of Christian, like literally any kind of Christian, was portrayed as some kind of moral viper, that kind of thing. Like, okay, take the show Last Man Standing. Mike, I absolutely agree with you, especially like Christian movies. Horrible. Like, a lot of them are just horrible. And so, like, it takes, because like you said, they're too in your face. They aren't subtle. They don't, again, one thing the left has right is they just make a story, and the story just contains the values that they have. And conservatives have to learn, don't write the values, just write the story and let the values just kind of get
well,
conveyed.
And then that's the thing. It always seems like to me that the biggest cheerleaders for capturing, on the conservative side, for capturing popular culture are just people that want to sell books. And they're not very good books, or they want to sell movies and they're not very good movies. Hey, it's conservative, it's Christian, it's going to help us take back the culture. And then it's like, I read your book, dude, it's shit. Like, I don't know why I paid for this.
Well, right.
An example I'll use. So BioWare does this a lot. I occasionally play video games. I am a nerd. BioWare has gotten to this shtick where every video game they make that's an RPG, role-playing game, you have a character, and your character can romance other non-player characters in the game. And there's always at least one homosexual option. Whether you play a female or a male, there's always at least one. They're usually bisexual or completely homosexual romance option. And the specific game that I'm thinking of is the Dragon Age series, which I really like. It's a really fun fantasy series. But in the first 2 games, the gay option feels very shoehorned. It's
Right.
like okay, this is clearly, you know, fan service.
Right.
In the second and the third game, I'm sorry, Dragon Age Inquisition, the storytelling was phenomenal, and the relationship and the dynamic between your character and the potential gay romance did not feel shoehorned at all. It was actually very fun to play. It's very entertaining. You could be a straight character. I'm sorry, you could be a straight individual playing a gay character and find yourself actually interested in what's happening to these individuals and what's going on with their stories. So Dragon Age kind of figured out that, hey, if we just tell a good story and it has gay characters in it, people will like it and they won't bitch so much about gay characters in their stories.
Right.
You could do the same thing. The problem is, if we're using homosexuality as kind of the example here, is if we were to somehow reverse that and just put only straight characters and even if we were telling good stories about straight characters, I don't think it would normalize. It wouldn't reverse any kind of normalization trends for gay marriage or gay rights or anything like that, because
that may not get reversed, because I don't think that's really what.
Example though, if you normalize women choosing to bear their children or to, I mean, you can normalize that, I guess.
See, but I think that mindset basically operates on the assumption in that people who watch television or movies, or people who consume media, let's put it that way, people who consume media of any kind are mindless, empty vessels, and as long as you just pour the right combination of crap into their brain, they'll regurgitate that crap. I don't think that's true. Media may be used to normalize something. In other words, it may be used to express a behavior as socially acceptable. But at the end of the day, it's the people that are. I don't think it makes people think that it's socially acceptable so much as it says the people that have always thought that, who might have just been in the closet and might have kept their opinions to themselves, now feel more comfortable speaking out and saying, "Hey, I agree with that show that teaches X, Y, and Z. I agree with it. I thought that was a great show too."
Well, I think it sets a tone. It sets a tone by making you think, oh, this is what's in vogue. I don't think it necessarily hits people and they're like, oh my God, this movie said this, now I'm going to say it. I think more what it is
you watch Kim Kardashian. That's exactly how you operate. You are.
Well, yeah, which is, again, why, oh God, I could not stand to watch any of that. But, you know, for certain people, it doesn't matter because, like you said, you don't particularly care about the industry that much, and neither do I. But, you know, so for a lot of people, though, especially younger people, what they haven't, again, it's no coincidence to me that channels like Nickelodeon and the Disney Channel have become slightly more, I hate to use the word sexualized, but it feels like you're watching something for an older audience, because I think they realize that you want to aim younger. And the idea is that the young people are very affected by what they think everyone else is doing because they want to fit in. So the thing is that if you make it look like, oh, everybody likes it, everybody thinks this is normal, it's perfectly fine, then they have a tendency to think, okay, well, I guess maybe I shouldn't. Again, it's not that they'll be for it, but they'll stop going against it. This is what, like Dee was saying, what happened basically with gay marriage is a lot. Even on the right, it had a noticeable effect. Not that we were for it more, but that we tended to be like, okay, let's take a more libertarian attitude towards it. Rather than try to ban gay marriage, let's just let marriage be libertarian and just let the whole thing go. You know, so that we're not as, to a great degree, I think conservatarian has become a very popular term, and I think the change on gay marriage is a large reason for it. And Hollywood did have some impact on that, because now we've just said, okay, it's too ingrained at this point, let's just let it go. You know, and I think that's.
I mean, I think that gay marriage and the acceptance of gay rights is probably like the single biggest cultural shift we've seen, because even if you look at polling on abortion's about where it was 10, 20 years ago. You know, if you look at when abortion is acceptable, when it isn't. But gay rights has swung way to acceptance, and I think that is a large. I think the culture has had a great deal to do with that. And I mean, I'm pro gay marriage, so I'm fine with it. It doesn't.
Right.
I'm not like. But it is interesting to think about. I do think that this is like the one issue where there's been a noticeable marked shift, and I think a large part of that has to do with the way gay culture is kind of shown in in movies and on TV.
Yeah. So you know, and so I guess the takeaway we have, I think, is that, you know, I know winding from Weinstein, winding. Anyway, that basically we really want to kind of get a feel for what effect really does all of this stuff going on in Hollywood have, you know. So I think we covered pretty well a lot of stuff that really give us some idea, even if we don't fully agree. I think we do agree that basically Hollywood does have a market effect on how people perceive the you know, the culture. So you know, but at any rate, you know, we've kind of run short on time here. I think, did we run a little over? No, we didn't. But anyway, first of all, we want to thank Sunny Bunch for coming on our show and for I guess elevating the discussion. And
just for the record, he is handsome, so we're gonna appeal to his vanity because he was afraid.
Yeah, and again, you know, especially he made it
feeling very handsome
individual. Don't ever invite me up to your hotel suite.
Exactly. Are you sure? Because no one's propositioned you.
Have some wine, bud.
Yeah.
Are you sure? Because no one's propositioned you. You might get one this time around.
I didn't want you to feel left out of the proposition club here. I thought,
right,
that's
exactly
what you wanted.
So, I feel better now. I feel inside. This warms my cold heart. So.
Where's the best place for people to be able to get a hold of you?
I don't know. I lived my whole life on Twitter, so if you look for me there, I'm probably there.
Absolutely best.
Also,
it's one of the best accounts to follow. That's for sure.
And I am the executive editor at the Washington Free Beacon. So if you like news and stuff, you can check that out. So.
Okay. So yep. So follow at Sunny Bunch, because I know it's SONNY Bunch, as in bunch. You know, like the
bunch
word.
Of shit.
So hey, you said it, not me.
But all right.
So yeah. So follow them there, and of course you can follow us. We are on Twitter, of course. We have you know, post the Twitter seizure, I guess, there where they, you know, are fighting with Mike. But we do have D at I hate _everyone 2, because apparently there was a one already taken.
One was
and
taken.
Then I, because no one can pronounce it, forgive me, it is in Japanese, it's an old pen name, but at Kamui Hiryoku, that is KAMUIHIRYOKU. That's it. You'll get used to it. Trust me.
We'll put it in the comment section so people can follow.
Of course it is. So yep, you can follow us there. We of course have the Ornery Young Guns channel on YouTube. So we do this every week. The times vary a little bit, but usually we're Saturdays at 10 p.m. So
you had to do it earlier this week because of me.
Yep, that's right.
You know what? I think Sunny was a good luck charm because we went through the whole show without a single technical difficulty. Like, that's amazing.
So we're
gonna have him back on the show. At least as a good luck charm, like he can just sit in the background and crack jokes while we talk to like a real guy. But it was great having you on the show, man.
It's either that or we can just like cut off your foot.
First one's free. If you want me on every week, it's gonna be, you know, we're gonna have to work out a compensation schedule here. Yeah.
Ah, gotcha. I see.
We'll buy you beer. We'll let you come as drunk as you want. Does that work?
Oh, well, I could live with that.
I know how to negotiate.
Dude, I swear we got to do one where. Oh crap, we can't all do that. I was gonna say because I was like, we should just drink, and I was like, crap, you guys don't drink. And I was like, damn, so that doesn't work.
What happens
But
when you have a Mormon co-host, bro?
I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure that I don't remember if do you drink or you teetotaler? I don't know.
You don't go on Twitter, do you, bro? Because
I remember I could have
like 5
sworn that she
vodkas
did.
in. All right, drunk DZM. Let's do this.
That's right. Okay, no, that's right. Okay, because I remembered something about
His
that.
follower
Okay, so
count just went up like 500.
I know, right? It's like what? It's like, oh crap, we gotta follow her now. So
Before we
now
end, hi to Bushy says hi to Sunny.
Oh.
Yes. So Sunny, I just am letting you know.
Sonny's like, what? No.
Right.
Just no. Just no, apparently. Well,
right. Thanks again, Sonny, for coming to the show. Thanks again, everyone, for watching. Again, like John said, please share, and we'll see you next week. Have a good night. Have a good weekend.